Many of Baba's life messages. How many were familiar with the life phase as opposed to the new life phase of Mayor Bob? So we're familiar with the new life, and we're familiar with the complicated free life, the full free life, fiery free life. But the life messages were actually began a phase of Baba's life in February of '52 that extended to the last month of his life. So the context for today's presentation, or where I'm coming from, is the emphasis on personal experience, silence, and inner leadings influenced by my life experience, and most importantly, by my relationship with Baba. And I think that goes for most of it. A big part of this, in addition to that, is Baba's timing. You know, infinite intelligence was waiting in the go-down for years and years and years. The book we're still waiting for. Baba's book, we still are waiting for it. We literally don't know what the next moment will bring. I wondered how many people would show up. I appreciate you showing up. My book, I wrote a book, and you're probably familiar with it, about this history of the center. And in it, Baba came for 2 weeks of seclusion, the first 2 weeks. And I phrased it in here as well. He was getting acquainted on the center, and then in Mani's book, she talked about, during the first 2 weeks, Mara, the women Mandali, Baba, we went to the kiddie park, the oceanarium, saw a drive-in movie, we drove around the hospital location, we went to Brook Green Gardens. As usual, a seclusion means more than what we think it is with Baba. So he made his home here, but completing the Man-o-Nash work for the benefit of the West is what he said he was doing in that 2 weeks. And when I read that, it only came out 2 years ago when Zoe and Jamie Newell did a video of the history of the center. And in that, there's a communication from Baba when he received a note from Elizabeth that everything was ready for his visit. He says, quote, "In order that the results of my work from October 16th, 1951, and she wrote this letter, again timing, at the beginning of October, so Baba received this letter, and he replies to her, he says, in order that the results of my work from October 16th, 1951 to February 1952, the period of Man-o-Nash, may be fully manifested in the Western world, either with the fullest success or as an utter failure, I must be in seclusion for the first 2 weeks of my stay in America." Now, I'm about to talk about Baba's avatarhood, and the term Parvardigar is a name for God the Preserver. Vishnu, it is the creator, the preserver, and the destroyer. The name Parvardigar, he who sustains creation. In its etymology, Parvar means to cherish or to care for, and Digar means again and again. You right?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
What?
Parvarish is to nourish, to flourish, and sustain. And Degar is just the title for God. He who nourishes, he who preserves.
Okay, it's interesting. In the etymological dictionary, they define it as Degar.
Yeah, but that's Digar, and that's a different word.
Okay,
leave it to Westerners
to
interpret Farsi.
This was described as a presentation and a discussion because many new things come out, so thank you for that. But be that as it may, the avatar does come again and again. But that's for different. Okay, So then the next thing about the avatar is that he referred to this being an end of a cycle of cycles. So in this cycle, there's 6 other avatars besides Baba being the 7th. And at the same time, all this is coinciding with the end of a cycle of cycles. Let that sink in. What does it mean to you personally? I mean, you think of all the lifetimes we've had, and that's God knows how many. And now we finally come to this incarnation where we find we're, in Baba's words, at an end of a cycle and cycle of cycles and cycles. Think what that means to Baba, all the visits he's been making, and think what it means to us to come here at this time, the opportunity that's conveyed in the expression of cycle of cycles. Now I want to go back a little bit in preparation from dealing with 52 and when the
Too much.
and when the Blue Bus tours began in 1938. So the Blue Bus tours, it was at the outset of World War II, and they ran from 1938 to 41. The bus was actually prepared by Soros in November of 38 and departed on December 8th. And when the bus returned in November 28th of 1941, Soros driving, Baba made the comment, "This blue bus is like the chariot of Krishna, and after my manifestation, people will worship it." Now, that's another thing to let sink in, the significance of the blue bus. How many of you get in that little, I still can't figure out how that many people got in it. It was during the Battle of Kurukshetra, that Krishna gave out the Gita. So that war between the Pandavas and Duryodhana was the defining moment of his advent and is memorialized in the Gita and the knowledge of the Gita. Similarly, at the outset of World War II, Baba gives out his discourses for the first time. He asked Elizabeth and Marina to do a journal, which was called the Mayor Baba Journal. And they said, okay. And then Elizabeth said, but Baba, if you don't contribute to it, who's going to read it? And so he agreed to contribute to it. And those contributions in each issue were the discourses where they first appeared. And the first discourse, unlike the book, the first discourse was Avatar. And that was in the first volume in November of 38. And in that, there's an expression, the first part we're familiar with, but there's something I want to emphasize. In that discourse, it says, the avataric periods are like the spring tide of creation on spring day. Avataric periods are like the spring tide of creation. They bring a new release of power, a new awakening of consciousness, a new experience of life, not merely for a few, but for all. But for all. Now this is what I'm continuing. Qualities of energy and awareness which had been used and enjoyed only by a few advanced souls are made available for all humanity. Life as a whole is stepped up to a higher level of consciousness, is geared to a new rate of energy. The transition from sensation to reason was one such step. The transition from reason to intuition will be another. So again, what a moment we are in. an end of a cycle of cycles, a transition from reason to intuition. We will see how Man-o-Nash and the life messages clearly define the unique opportunity we are presented with. What is the nature of this moment from the perspective of growing intuition as we continue to be in the world and use our intellects? Adi Keirani, it's in his notebook. Scott McCaig have it. A number of you may be familiar with this. But in his notes, he quotes Baba as saying, just as reason is the perfection of sensation, intuition is the perfection of reason. Now, in our lives, sensation, reason, and intuition all work together. Put ourselves in the role of the early ones in Baba's personal presence. Baba interacted with them, but what did he say? Remember, I am not this body. Constantly would say that. After Baba dropped the body, the mandali, his close ones, we were all attracted to. Such profound personal connections, yet they always said, look to Baba, not us. Look to Baba, not us. I mean, we profound lessons we learned from them, but look to Baba, not us. It's the nature of humans, particularly seekers, to look to or for someone or some source outside of us that experiences or know more or knows more. Who do we look to now? During the pandemic, on a worldwide scale, people were forced to look within themselves for strength to face the challenges of their unique circumstances. They could no longer go to church, a bar, a sports event. The internet and Zoom helped considerably, but people physically were confined to their homes with family and close ones, and were forced to look inward for strength, for God. Personally, I feel the pandemic marked, underscored, underlined, the beginning of a loosening the demands of the external, challenged reason and intellect to comprehend worldly dynamics, and turned us to look to the internal, especially for the seeker. Thanks to a dent in my car, I happened to pick up a copy of Beams, which I hadn't seen in a while, and open to Spiritual Jingoism, and two quotes from it. Among the seekers, there are two categories: those who are sincerely struggling with their backs against the wall, and those who pretend to seek. And this is very significant now. All search is a struggle to arise from the false to the real. No struggle is possible unless the seeker has some initial idea, right or wrong, about the real. Further, the false cannot eternally take its stand upon the false and patently and wantonly cling to itself and remain itself endlessly. This is the point. Thus arises the imperative need to visualize the truth, to take one's stand on this imagined or perceived truth, and to act as if one has realized this cherished goal of search. I'm going to read it again. Thus arises the imperative need to visualize the truth, to take one's stand on this imagined or perceived truth, and to act as if one has realized this cherished goal of search. Continuing with the quote, this also implies a belief that one has realized it, although, again and again, one will be rudely shaken out of this belief by having to face the unchallengeable facts that overtake one in one's imaginative race. Thus our life, our life. Okay, so now we're ready to examine Man-o-Nash and Baba's life messages. But first, just a moment of silence. Completing his Man-o-Nash, January 31st, 1952, Baba stated, quote, "From now on I free myself of external religious ceremonies that I observed during the New Life and the Man-o-Nash period." On a piece of paper Baba had given Erich, Baba had written, "All rites, rituals, and ceremonies of all the religions of the world are hereby consumed in the flames." Baba took the note from Erich, tore it up, and threw it in the Duni fire. This action presages Baba's vision for Meher Spiritual Center. I'm bringing this up because he completed Man-o-Nash for the benefit of the West at the Meher Spiritual Center. On July 5th at the center, in a letter to Ivy Deuce, Baba stated, "Meher Center on the Lakes, Myrtle Beach, is not a Sufi, Vedantic, Buddhist, Christian, or Zoroastrian center. It is the Baba Center based on universality." We are aware of the work that Baba did with religions, rites, and rituals, and the destruction of the mind in Man-o-Nash. But we are not, or less, aware that his work initiated a new phase of Baba's advent called the life phase that extended from February 6, 1952 until he dropped his body. It consists of 71 life circulars, and with the last being issued on January 15, 1969. We have been focused on the new life and its labor phase as an ongoing focus. But Man-o-Nash, the complicated free life, the full free life, and the fiery free life are more or less viewed as events and are not fully appreciated in their full context of Baba's life phase. So let us read the life circulars, just the first few. And we'll begin with life circular number 1. They are published by Adi Keirani, and you'll find them if you have your phone, and you can go to the Trust website, and under Books by Meher Baba, just scroll down about 10 or 15, and you'll see Life Circulars by Meher Baba. And the first one is on February 6th, and it's entitled Man-o-Nash. And it was dictated in Merazad, Pimplegown. God is everywhere and does everything. God is within us and knows everything. God is without us and sees everything. God is beyond us and is everything. Doesn't leave a lot of room for the ego. The one, all-pervading, all-comprehending, all-powerful God who is the self of ourselves, and besides whom nothing is real, has helped me and guided me during the Man-o-Nash period of my work, and now makes me dictate to you the following. To try to understand with the mind that which the mind can never understand is futile, and to try to express by sounds of language and in form of words the transcendental state of the soul is even more futile. All that can be said, and has been said, and will be said by those who live and experience that state is that when the false self is lost, the real self is found, that the birth of the real can only follow the death of the false, and that dying to ourselves, the true death, which ends all dying, is the only way to perpetual life. This means that when the mind with its satellites, desires, cravings, longings, is completely consumed by the fire of divine love, then the infinite, indestructible, indivisible, eternal self is manifested. This is Man-o-Nash, the annihilation of the false, limited, miserable, ignorant, destructible I, to be replaced by the real I, the eternal possessor of infinite knowledge, love, power, peace, bliss, and glory. In its unchangeable existence, Man-o-Nash, which is bound to result in this glorious state, when plurality goes and unity comes, ignorance goes and knowledge comes, binding goes and freedom comes. We are all permanently lodged in this shoreless ocean of infinite knowledge, and yet are infinitely ignorant of it, until the mind, which is the source of this ignorance, vanishes forever. For ignorance ceases to exist when the mind ceases to exist. Unless and until ignorance is removed and knowledge is gained, the knowledge whereby the divine life is experienced and lived, everything pertaining to the spiritual seems paradoxical. God, whom we do not see, we say is real. And the world that we do see, we say is false. In experience, what exists for us does not really exist, and what does not exist for us really exists. We must lose ourselves in order to find ourselves. Thus, loss itself is gain. We must die to self to live in God. Thus, death means life. We must become completely void inside to be completely possessed by God. Thus, complete emptiness means absolute fullness. We must become naked of selfhood by possessing nothing, so as to be absorbed in the infinity of God. Thus, nothing means everything. For these last 4 months, according to ordinary human standards and by ways and means known to me, I have tried my utmost for the achievement of Man-o-Nash, and I can say in all truth that I feel satisfied with the work done. This satisfaction is due to the feeling I have of having regained my old life Meher Baba state, yet retaining my new life ordinary state. I have regained the knowledge, strength, and greatness that I had in the old life, and retained the ignorance, weaknesses, and humility of the new life. This union of old and new life states has given birth to life, all caps, life. Life that is eternally old and new. Life, for me, now means 1, free and obligationless life. 2, life of a master in giving orders, and that of a servant in all humility. 3, the feeling of absolute conviction that we are all eternally one, indivisible, and infinite in essence, and with it a feeling of separateness from the real omnipresent self through ignorance. 4, life of God in essence and that of man in actions. 5, life of strength born of inherent knowledge of oneness and of weakness born of binding desires. My efforts for Man-o-Nash have been positive, and the result of Man-o-Nash will be positive. But the actual concrete manifestation of this result, I leave entirely to the divine sanction where, how, and when the result will be. I leave entirely to the divine decree. It may be at any moment, hour, month, year, or age. It may be in any part of the world, either in the east or in the west, in the north or the south, yet in effect will embrace all four. It may be under any and all circumstances. I feel that it will be a sudden coming, and a becoming of the essence of all love, unity, realization, revelation, and illumination in its varying degrees, for me and for all those connected with me. During my work, the four companions who were with me, as also others who were near or away from me, have helped me to their utmost limit. All along my Man-o-Nash period, I have been absolutely helpless and full of weaknesses in my ordinary human state. And it can truly be said that God in his manifestation, and that the saints and the prayers of those who love me have accomplished for me the internal work of Man-o-Nash, while the four companions have seen to its external aspect. I intend to go in the beginning of April of this year to the West for some months. I expect to lead a complicated free life from March 21st, a full free life from July 10th, and a fiery free life from November 15th. From the 16th of February, I make myself free to accept gifts and as free to refuse them. From the 21st of March, anyone who wishes to come to me to see me and contact me may do so, but he or she must make his own arrangements as regards stay, food, etc. I might give Mass Darshan when I feel it necessary or have the inclination to do so. Any reference to my old life state, which I have now regained, may be expressed verbally in my presence by anyone who wishes to do so, but I will not, in accordance with my new life standards, accept any external homage, such as bowing or touching of the feet. Although Man-o-Nash work is done fully and completely, and the result must and will come 100% to my satisfaction, I now give freedom to each and all who are connected with me. I now give freedom to each and all who are connected with me to choose what manner of life they henceforth wish to live. They are free either to live with me and, of course, obey my orders, or to live away from me and obey my orders, to lead the life I tell them to lead, or to lead their own lives in any way they please. In other words, completely free from orders of any kind from me. This includes the arrangement laws, but it is in their case, the only kind of freedom I cannot give them is freedom from the responsibility that they have shouldered to the end. No matter what choice he makes, everyone shall share when the real freedom comes at any moment by the grace of God. No matter what choice he makes, everyone shall share when the real freedom comes at any moment by the grace of God. To sum up my Man-o-Nash work, 1, I feel in all truth that the 4 months Man-o-Nash work has been done by me by the help of God to my entire satisfaction. 2, the result of this work must bear fruit sooner or later either in the immediate present or some time later or the distant future. 3, the result will bring freedom to us all in proportion to the merits of love, faith, and service. Again, the result will bring freedom to us all in proportion to the merits of love, faith, and service. 4, this freedom will be freedom from ignorance and will be knowledge that we always were, are, and will be one with God. 5, the knowledge will make us realize and experience infinite love, power, bliss, and peace, which we always possessed and knew not of. So this then is the discussion phase. If anybody has any comments or want me to reread something apart.
Baba was such a poet.
What?
He was such a poet with words. Matchless.
It's such an unbelievable context for the whole rest of his whole life. I want to just read the first part because, he says, don't worry, be happy. God is everywhere and does everything. God is within us and knows everything. God is without us and sees everything. God is beyond us and is everything.
Over the last year, Jonathan and I have been in conversation from time to time. And we have come to a summary of the conclusion with only 2 words: surrender, love. He's remembering good.
Yeah.
The unity is not a belief, it is an experience. An experience. And I want to share with you that that actually experienced a physical death and a life of incredible clarity. It was amazing. It was like, all of the fog had gone, and the expression of that for me has been to invite myself to a Southern Baptist congregation to experience the unity of God among people who culturally, religiously, and when you read about liturgies and whatnot, it is so important that those not become an obstacle to our relationships with people, because in the sense that we are all seekers, we can relate in our seeking, but even more, we can relate and be unified in our finding, or not so much finding, but being found. That the unity that I have found and am finding with the members of this Southern Baptist congregation is beyond imagining. and I really hope that that others will feel this this unity of God that permits a family of all people. It is it has just been astounding to me. I came along before, about 6 years before Jonathan did. So I am now, am I telling a secret? I just turned 86. And frankly, I am astounding. The people around me, I am now the oldest member of the Southern Baptist congregation. I am the oldest member of a group of retired folks, prime-timers. And yet, I am finding within myself a capacity, a physical capacity, as well as a mental and creative capacity, which blows people's minds. This morning, with my walker, I walked probably half a mile, and then I went to a pool and I swam for a mile. And, tomorrow I will spend 2.5 hours, paddling a kayak. I ride a bike. Somebody said, well, I guess you could do a triathlon. But what I'm trying to say is that experiencing that surrender to, what you describe, I'm not familiar with that term, but I love it, that there is a term for it, that I'm experiencing. I didn't expect to talk this much. Excuse me.
No problem.
Jonathan?
Yeah.
I want to just make a brief comment to what you're saying, is that one thing that's beautiful about what Baba said is he has come to flood all religions, all cults, all organizations and societies with his love, with his truth. So they're not necessarily going to be converted to Baba lovers, but they're going to get infused with what Baba has brought, which is that love and service and everything else he brought us. So.
Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, Jonathan, on that last 5 points you made, the third one, he talks about the result will bring freedom to us all in proportion. You use the word the. The text I'm reading from the thing says our merits.
Well, let's see. The third one.
That's an actuarial nitpickiness.
This is, let's see what. Yes, our merits.
Yeah, and I just had a question.
Thank you, that's very important.
Yeah, you used the several times, and then I looked at the text and it says our, so is it like a proportion? And who is our and what merits?
Yeah, it really, that inherent in this thing is that Baba is giving us a choice. And in that choice, the degree that we can surrender and set aside the separation that our ego creates in thinking that we're doing something, and surrender it and realize that he is doing everything, as that first 4 lines says, then to the degree that we do that, we still function. And I'll get to it later, but creation is all about use. Baba uses rocks, vegetables, worms, birds, ultimately humans. They're all use to get consciousness to go from complete ignorance back to realizing its Godhood. And so everything is about use. So all it is we have to surrender what we think is our activity or use and give it to him, that he uses everything. And the biggest thing where the intellect gets into the way, and on a personal note, when I first came to Bob, well, the second time I came to Bob, later, and Baba stressed the importance of being honest and natural. And was a very sociable kind of person, you know. And I'd be going along, oh, I'll help this person, I'll do that. And then I have an idea look, that's wrong, I shouldn't do that. So when we are inclined towards negativity or something we think is wrong, the mind comes in and we're no longer honest and natural. And also we can, by the same token, instead of just letting us do that negative thing, that may have positive consequences. If it's done naturally, it will. By the same token, sometimes when we do good things and we do them out from the mind, they can have bad consequences because, you know, we're not genuine. And so that was a big challenge to me. And I realized that, actually the one insight I had at one point, this is just my thing, you know. I said, you know, if realization comes about when you balance good and bad sanskaras, well, you don't want to mess with the bad sanskaras. You know, you want to get a balance of both. The important thing is to be natural, be who you are, not try to be what somebody else is. And so that's why this, as you noted, is a very individual thing. He uses the term "our," but it's a relationship between the individual and God in every case. And the thing is that in this work of Man-o-Nash, Baba has done it for the benefit of all. It's not like we have to do something. He has done it, and it was interesting because you brought up belief. Does anybody else have any one comment? I'll go to the next. Yeah. Sure.
Well, what do you said he came over here to do Man-o-Nash in the West. Do you see a difference between the East and the West, Man-o-Nash?
No, it's the same Man-o-Nash.
Yeah, but what was different about coming here then?
Well, you know, the presence of the Avatar is an incredible thing.
Okay.
So he did it. To me, what it really cemented, which is what this book is about, is the incredible significance of Merazad and Mare Spiritual Center as Baba's homes, because home is a place of experience. It's not a place to understand anything. You go there and you experience Baba's love as you go to any home and you experience love. And the person whose home you go to, they want to welcome you, embrace you, make you feel at home, love you. And so that aspect of home is all powerful. And to me, that he chose home. And you know, I left out a part that is kind of bad. That thing about the blue bus. The blue bus was occupied by women, the Eastern and Western Mandali, and the bus was driven often by Elizabeth. So when you think of Krishna and Arjuna in the chariot, and Krishna gives the message to Arjuna, that is the Bhagavad Gita. Here we have Baba, during the Blue Bus tour, through the Mayor Messages, which was edited by Elizabeth, and I've forgotten what she was, whether Norina was artistic director or what, but they were responsible for it. There, Baba is giving that, I would say, equivalent message in the significant war that he was responsible for directing. Sai Baba directed World War I, Baba directed World War II. And so it was through women in this advent and the elevation of women, the status of women worldwide, but particularly in the West, that this happened. And I'll get to it later, but the role of Norina is extremely significant as a woman in terms of the message she conveyed through thought transmission talks when she came to America. Also, Elizabeth and Norina, when they came to America as Western Mandali, they were coming to America in 1941 when the Allies were in worsening straits all around the world. And Baba, in that year of 1941, said, 1941 is the most significant year of my advent. And during that year, he gave out in January the 7 realities. But that's the essence of all the religions. And then he said that in August 1st, he was going to break his silence inwardly. He was going to speak the word inwardly. And then in June, he sends Narina, Elizabeth, and Nadine Tolstoy back to America. They are his instruments. They are his presence physically in America through them. And what happened in America, or what happened later at that time, there's a number of things, but I'll just mention 2. Upasani Maharaj meets Baba for the last time and says, you now have the keys, the powers of all of the 5 perfect masters now reside with you. That was in, I think it was November of 41. On December 7th, Pearl Harbor happens. The United States had been completely isolation except for Roosevelt had managed to get some lend-lease, but they were not involved in war. All of a sudden, full force, the United States is plunged into the war. And then next the Blue Bus comes, that ends that Blue Bus tour. There's more that's that, but I got onto a digression, did I? A question?
Your brother.
Yeah.
I wanted to respond to your question.
Mm-hmm.
Going back, you talk of sense being perfected by reason, and reason being perfected by intuition. The difference, that I see between the Eastern and the Western is that the Eastern is more intuitive, and the Western is stuck in reason and is unable to get beyond reason or, manufacture. And intuition is the freedom, I think, that you talk about, that comes with intuition and permits us to perfect reason. And I think that is the challenge, when Baba comes to establish a home in the West, that is the challenge, to address the perfection of reason.
Yeah, it's interesting. India finds itself in an interesting situation. If you visit Pune or it's a place in the south, they're really adopting a lot of reasoning now and taking the technology of the West. So it is a transition everybody's going through in terms of but it's interesting, your Waccamaw River Voyager mate, which by the name of James Burroughs, had built a like Walden Pond, like yeah, he built a white frame and lived there. He made the observation about the contrast of the East and the West, and it has to do with, he actually used the feminine and the male. One is more, active and one is more receptive. But
I'm reading the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, and there is a chapter about who are these special people. who are these leaders? And the author identifies these leaders as people who have the capacity to be with another person without judgment or prejudice, but they have the capacity for a love which surpasses the ego, which is so much a part of so many, interpersonal relationships. Each person trying to establish or affirm themselves, or even to find themselves, but the leader, and maybe we can even say, Avatar, is someone who has the capacity to love without prejudgment and without judgment or criticism, but to love and to embrace the person in a way which permits them to find themselves.
You described very well what many of the people that met Baba in the lagoon cabin here experienced, total acceptance. Also, when you were talking about how you said it in the Book of the Dead, where an individual meets someone in that total acceptance, I'm just going to throw out a name. How many of you have heard, except maybe in the last year, the name Anton Barslag? Anton Barslag, B-A-R-S-L-A-A-G. That's a teaser, I'll tell you in a minute. But he speaks to this point about this capacity to be in a space of total acceptance. But I'm going to, unless there's something else, I'm going to go to, quickly, I'm just going to read Life Circular number 2. It's,
Excuse me, Jonathan, you had.
yeah. Man-o-Nash.
Intuition is actually the language of the spirits, because when we die, we don't have reason. We basically, all is feeling and acceptance and love if you are in that level of consciousness. So, or if you are in a hell state of consciousness, you have to feel the suffering and agony. But then there is no logic, there is no reason. So basically, reason is very in a material world. What is happening right now, it seems like people are even getting out of their reasons and logics, in a sense that they're behaving something that it's non-logical, but at the same time is not opening up the door to the world of a spirit. Or even a spiritual path, you don't logic, you don't reason. It's just you accept and you love. Otherwise, the door is closed at you. And the Eastern, this gentleman was talking about, I come from the Eastern culture. And they are grounded in that, so they know that. And so many beautiful poetry that we have, in Farsi, and all those God-realized souls and masters and all that, they have written it out. Like, you cannot go higher if you don't let it go. So.
A good point.
Yes.
The Western, I may have made too much of the Western influence there, but it's definitely true. The gift of the East is immeasurable. Anything else?
I think Baba has planted the seed of spirituality in the West by coming here.
Yeah.
Him and others like, Vivekananda and so forth. And the destiny of America, as he said, is bright and spiritual.
Right,
So it's a good start.
right. Yeah, when you're, the darker it is, the easier it is to move to the light, you know. So Life Circular number 2 was actually issued the same day, on the February 6th. And so Life Circular number 1, Man-o-Nash, was dictated by the master on the alphabet board. This circular is glorious because of the message it gives, and also significant because it marks the birth of a new series of circulars entitled Life Circulars. Mayor Baba, the divine and the ordinary, the master and the servant, ask that in token of your acceptance of this first Life Circular, you should send an amount ranging from a minimum of 25 rupees to a maximum of 5,000 rupees. 1. Every gift should be as much as the giver can conveniently afford, but no more. 2. Every gift must be a free gift of love. 3. There must be no expectation of a return or reward in any form. Those, including any who have not received this circular, who decide to send gifts in conformity with the above 3 conditions, should remit to Adike Arani, etc. Then number 3, which is Life Circular number 3, issued on this February 16th, but it was written in Marizon, Pimplegown, February 12th. God's blessing and my love to you all on this, my first real birthday, Baba. What an underscoring of my first real birthday. Definitely a new faith. He goes on in a second message on the same day. Oh God, today being my first real birthday, my heart expresses that the declaration of life by me was entirely yours and by your will, because nothing happens save by your will. All my knowledge and my ignorance, all my strength and my weakness, all my freedom and my bondage are as you have desired and decreed. This life eternal will be lived by me in conformity with your will, and every word of the declaration of the life will come to pass by your grace. Circular number 4 deals with Baba's health and his availability to his lovers prior to his trip to America. So I'm going to skip that. It's just nuts and bolts. And Life Circular number 5 has 3 parts. I'm going to read the first 2. The third was instructions, detailed instructions to Erich and Pendu when they were going out in preparation for his fiery free life. So Life Circular number 5, issued on March 21st. Today being the first day of my complicated free life, I feel happy to declare the following through this circular, which consists of A, clarification of life and its 3 phases. B, a message to those who believe in my life circular number 1. That really struck me, believe. A message to those who believe in my life circular number 1. C, instructions to Erich and Pendu for 7 months from April 1 to the end of October 52. A, 1. Life today finds me both strong and weak. Strength is the conviction of knowledge and the old life Mayor Baba state, while the ordinary human state of weakness and binding desires makes me feel utterly weak. 2. As already declared by me, I have left to God's decree and sanction the result of the Man-o-Nash work for myself and all concerned. Where, how, and when the result of this work will be, I leave entirely to the will of God. 3. During my complicated free life, full free life, and fiery free life, I, with the help of those who are ready to do so, will do the work as revealed to me under the guidance of God. I feel that in my complicated free life, binding will dominate freedom. In my full free life, freedom will dominate binding. In my fiery free life, both freedom and binding will, by the grace of God, be merged into the divine life. Part B. My message today to those who love me and believe in my life is that in order to escape this cosmic illusion and to realize and attain the supreme reality, we must abide by the following. First and foremost, our complete surrender to the God-man in whom God reveals himself in his full glory, his infinite power, his unfathomable knowledge, his inexpressible bliss, and his eternal existence. Should this complete surrender not be possible, then one or some of the following, if faithfully carried out, can win the grace of God. 1. Wholehearted love for God, thirst for seeing him, longing for knowing him, and a burning desire for union with him constitutes this all-consuming love for which the lover forsakes everything, including himself. 2. Keeping constant company of saints and lovers of God and rendering them wholehearted service. 3. Guarding the mind against temptations of lust, greed, anger, hatred, power, fame, and fault-finding. 4. Absolute and complete external renunciation, whereby one leaves everyone and everything, and in solitude devotes oneself to prayer, fasting, and meditation. 5. Living in the world and yet practicing complete internal renunciation. This means attending to all worldly duties without attachment, knowing all to be an illusion and only God to be real, carrying out one's worldly affairs with a pure heart and a clean mind, and living the life of a recluse in the midst of intense activity. 6. Selfless service. One who practices this thinks not of himself but of the happiness of others, serves others with no thought of gain or reward, never allows the mind to be upset or disappointed, and facing all odds and difficulties, cheerfully sacrifices his welfare for the good of others. This is the life of the selfless worker. So then it goes on to instructions to heirs and pendu. So any comments? Maybe one preliminary comment that struck me was that when Baba gives that aspect of not giving orders, the option to not follow his orders, to go wherever you are, do whatever we do, these seemed like guidelines of how to structure our life in accordance with our goal to live a life of love, faith, and service.
I'm curious if in any of these circulars he went more in depth to explain that surrender, that first one.
I'll get to this later, because I think there, in one case, we all know what it means, don't worry, be happy. We all know what surrender means, but doing it, the mind is very tricky, very tricky. And But as I mentioned earlier in that thing, it's important for us to imagine that we are doing that we are surrendering, that we are not worrying, that we're trusting fully in Baba, and we will get a rude awakening.
Our
Daily.
hands slapped.
What?
Your brother has a comment?
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
What I have experienced is I have been confronted by people, trying to perceive, who I am, and frankly, what are my sins? When people can identify your sins, somehow they feel more comfortable around you. Because they can identify with sins, They have more difficulty, they have more difficulty with love. And what my experience has been is that when I was confronted, I had the capacity for utter honesty. It's because of the freedom from judgment. It was kind of like, you will see yourself in me, and you will see the parts of yourselves in me that cause you pain. You'll also see, in me, a capacity for peace, for which everyone has a hunger. And the freedom to be, unassailable because of utter self-acceptance is just, it's life-giving. It's what life is all about, and so that. One of the secrets that I was born with is a malformation in my brain which causes seizures. I have been epileptic from birth. It was never diagnosed as a child. I had seizures as a child, but it was never determined why I had seizures until I was age 40. In those first 40 years, I developed a capacity to maintain a sense of control because I had experienced that when I got excited, when I got aroused, I was vulnerable. What I'm finding now is I'm beginning to trust. Excitement. Yeah, I had to leave. I had to leave the room because when I get excited, my plumbing starts to function. I need. But the amazing thing is, it's to surrender, to love is to receive. The capacity to be for people what they need from their point of view. It's miraculous. It's beyond understanding. Frankly, it's ego destroying because you can't take any credit for what you're doing. You know what I'm talking about. You can't take any credit for what's happening, but you can joyously participate in it and be a cheerleader. For the change that's going on in somebody else. I came across this shirt, and it's it's an appeal for acceptance of autistic individuals. And I looked at this and I said, well, this individual is wearing earphones as if to cut out, you know, the outside stimulation which was so destructive of their person, you know? And then I realized those earphones are serving a purpose, you know? And it's important for me to respect the privacy of other persons. And the most fundamental way that I have done that is sharing myself in all honesty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? So now we get to Anton Barzlag. That wonderful contributor to the essence of Baba's experience when he came to Myrtle Beach in 1952. So go back to 1952 and imagine you are one of his lovers taking Baba's darshan in the barn, or maybe somebody in Myrtle Beach who knows that Elizabeth has this man from India visiting who's important, and there's a public opportunity to meet him, and you come to the center to meet him. Anton Barzlag was one of those people. He was a herpetologist, if I've got it right. He studied snakes. It's not an old Southern name, to my knowledge. He was from New York, but he came to the barn, met Baba. On the Friday, a week later, on the 23rd of May, his article appeared in the Myrtle Beach News about his experience in meeting Baba and visiting the center. It made it into the life circulars of Baba's life phase as message number 6. And this gets back to the Book of the Dead, and there's a reference into here. So you figure a lot of people in Myrtle Beach met Baba during that public darshan, and probably a lot of them and a few more read this article. It's not your usual article. It was issued on February 7th, 1952, and it appeared in the Myrtle Beach News on Friday, May 23rd, the day before the accident. Its title, Who Are Your Neighbors? Subtitle, Mayor Baba, by Anton Barzlag. There is a beautiful essay by Maurice Maeterlinck called Les Silence, excuse my French, in which the poet-philosopher expounds that in silence, man is nearest to the reality, to God. Quote, "We don't know each other yet," he exclaims to a friend, "because we have never dared to remain silent together." Thomas Carlyle eulogizes on silence, the great empire of silence, higher than the stars, deeper than the mystery of death. The importance attached to silence in worship by the Quakers is well known. John Greenleaf Whittier expresses this so gracefully, yet concisely, in his lovely poem, First Day Thoughts. It goes, "In calm and cool and silence, Once again I find my old accustomed place among my brethren, where perchance no human tongue shall utter words. There, syllabled by silence, let me hear the still small voice which reached the prophet's ear. Read in my heart a still diviner law than Israel's leader on his tablets saw. And here's what Mayor Baba, who arrived from Pimplegown, India, I love it that it was Pimplegown. He arrived from Pimplegown, India at Mayor Center on the Lakes, Myrtle Beach, has to say about silence. God has been everlastingly working in silence, unobserved, unheard, except by those who experience his infinite silence. If my silence cannot speak, of what avail would be speeches made by the tongue? The very moment when he thinks my speaking would be heard universally, God will make me break my silence. Mayor Baba has been in silence for many years, 27, we are told, and still is. Though he feels that he has been successful in his efforts for the achievement of Man-o-Nash, quote unquote, the annihilation of the mind, in other words, the losing of oneself in order to find oneself, the time has not yet come to break his silence. Mayor Baba leaves the manifestation of the result entirely to the divine decree. It may be at any moment, year, or age, but he feels that the result of his work must bear fruit sooner or later. It will bring freedom to all, freedom from ignorance, and it will be the knowledge that everything is one with God, entailing infinite love, power, bliss, and peace, which we always possessed without realizing it. This, as far as we can gather from our smattering of the subject, is the quintessence of Mayor Baba's message. It is well nigh impossible to give a clear conception of the underlying principle in a short space, especially for Western minds not used to the Eastern religious philosophy. The oneness with the all-comprehending God is best symbolized by comparison with the sun. When the sun's rays are playing on earthly objects, each ray seems to be a separate unit, whereas in reality it is only seemingly and temporarily separated from the great source of all light, the sun. When reading the booklet and pamphlet graciously presented to visitors of the Mayor Baba Center last Friday, those who are acquainted with the great Hindu epic Mahabharata, I don't know how many people that was in Myrtle Beach, but will recollect the Upanishads of the Bhagavad Gita. These dialogues of Sri Krishna and Arjuna belong to the yoga writings, and the principal lesson to be drawn from the Gita is that the spiritual man need not be a hermit, but oneness with the divine life can be achieved in the midst of worldly affairs. The impediments for that oneness are not external, but within ourselves. Like many others, we were happy to avail ourselves of the opportunity offered to meet Mayor Baba. He is a slender, dark-complexioned, mild-mannered, and simple man. Besides an extraordinary kindness in his face and bearing, we seem to detect something indefinable in his appearance, which we will call, for lack of a better word, transcendental. He seemed to sense that we would like to ask a question and motioned his hand and in acquiescence. The handicap of his persistent silence was ingeniously solved by means of a small board showing an alphabet on which Mayor Baba pointed out various letters. An interpreter translated the answer in spoken words, and then a few minutes allotted to us were passed. Still, those few minutes left an impression with us. The more we pondered his answer, the more meaning we found in his words. There are often Quaker meetings where no ministry occurs, where nobody feels moved to utter words, and frequently these constitute the most satisfactory meetings of worship. In the silence, heart flows to heart, and there is, as the old Quaker used to say, a web over the meeting. We do not know if and what ritual or service the adepts of Mayor Baba practice, but it is certain that a silent meeting of worship with Baba present would be an unforgettable experience, as he potently emphasizes the need for all of us of ever-increasing communion with God.
Wow.
What a message, eh?
Obviously a irregular soul.
Yeah, I don't know whether he was an agent or what, but he probably came here to study snakes, and I don't know whether this was freelance or he was part of their staff. But the point is that Baba made a notice in evidential terms, this letter, and it's been in these life messages for decades. And as far as I know, I'm sure people have read it, but it's just registering now. And the significance of it is people that were here with Baba at that time were absorbed in Baba and the effect he was personally having with them. Man-o-Nash, I didn't get an impression that people were talking about it. I mean, they must have to some degree, but it isn't reflected in the literature. And so, again, regarding the timing and gradual manifestation of Baba's universal work, I would like to recall again the significance of the Blue Bus tours from 1938 to 41 and the Mayor Baba Journal of Krishna's Chariot and the Bhagavad Gita. Who was in the Blue Bus? The Eastern and Western Women Mandali, and Elizabeth was the driver. And also, the Man-o-Nash work was completed in his homes. His home east, Marizat, his home west, Mayor Spiritual Center. And I have to say that who is it that makes a home? Women make a home. It has to do with that capacity, not of getting something done, but of embracing and making people feel at home. So in the Mayor Baba Journal, which I'm equating to that message similar to the Gita, in addition to Baba's discourses being in each issue, there were many contributors, C.D. Deshmukh, just Indian and Western, Darwin, Elizabeth, many contributors, including Narina Machabelli. Yet many of her contributions were thought transmissions. I'll just note that Narina began hearing a voice very early in her life. And when she played in The Miracle, the play where she played the role of Mary as a statue for the first two acts and had to stand immovable, which was a great meditation, she said, immovable for the first two acts. And she performed it 1,000 times, both in Europe and America. She communed with Mary, as well as this voice. And when she met Baba in 31, she wrote an 8-page letter to Baba asking whether he was this voice, because she recognized who Baba was. Were you the voice? The voice had told her prior to meeting Baba not to speak out, to keep it to herself. Baba continued to do that. Elizabeth and Narina began as a pair, this very close relationship with Baba in those intervening years until 37, when the Nasik period came and Baba had them all get together and said the main rule is get along, and then he would take people of opposite natures and put together on a task. But the important thing was to be harmonious, the biggest challenge, be harmonious with all. And then in 38 begins, this was all preparation, and then the Blue Bus tour begins, and right from the beginning, these articles start coming, and in the 4th issue, which was February, just 3 months after the first issue, the 4th issue, Narina writes an article called The Voice, in which she describes this voice that she is speaking of, which is Baba's voice, by thought transmission. And there and other places when she refers to Baba sanctioning it in the articles, that this is my voice. And that voice begins with this phrase, this statement. It isn't a thought transmission, she's quoting him. Sri Meher Baba has said, quote, "For 12 years no word has passed my lips, yet I am never silent. I speak eternally. The voice that is heard deep within the soul is my voice, the voice of inspiration, of intuition, of guidance. Through those who are receptive to this voice, I speak." I had a lot of quotes I could have taken from that, but I'm not going to do that. I want to read some of she also referred to this not as thought transmissions, but as the mystical language. But apropos of transmission, thought transmissions, transmissions is interesting because we kind of think, oh, she was channeling Baba or something like that. That I often wondered, I kind of felt antsy about that. But when I said transmission, it isn't a transmission. What Narina was doing and what she invites us to participate in through the intuitive voice that's within each of us that we can tap is Baba is everything. Everything. He's in everything and does everything. He is within us and knows everything. He is without us and sees everything. He is beyond us and is everything. What voice that we hear is that ever-present, omnipresent, impersonal God, if you will, that expressed itself through Baba as the avatar and expresses itself through us as our particular portion, whether we're aware of it or not. And so this mystical language that she writes of in some of these articles, it gets very difficult. And Baba actually says, and through Narina in it, it's just the rhythm, it's the energy, it's the vibration. Don't try to understand. And so for a number of years, a number of Scott has had a group. He uncovered this, Scott McKay, when he was in India in the very early 70s. Adi Kairani gave him copies of the Meher Baba journals, and particularly with reference to Narina's messages, said, see what you can make of these. Scott was in the middle of his graduate work, and he ended up creating a self-independent study PhD in on Narina's articles, messages. In the part of that research, he asked Kitty about it, and one of the things Kitty shared was that when Narina was writing out these articles, she and Rano and others had the job of writing them up for publication. And she said, we told Baba, English isn't Elizabeth's first language, Narina's first language. Can't we kind of work on these? Baba said, don't change a single word. These are for the future. You are children. And I think children in the respect that they did whatever Baba told them to do. They didn't evaluate, they didn't think about things. Mm-hmm. They did whatever he said. So they were printed as is. And the instruction was just to read. I think of it as reading them like poetry. You don't get hung up and try to figure out what it is. It kind of dawns. And in my experience of them, as in the reading of them, it does begin to dawn. Like, I'm going to take a few of the terms. One is a realization, reaction, response. Baba in the mission talks about realization, reaction, response. And what is that? What is that? Baba said, I am the I. There's only one I. It's God. We, in that I-ness, which empowers in our spirit, which is our spirit, our mind appropriates it as our I. But it's Baba's I, whether we're aware of it or not. So everything and everyone has God within them. Now, if God came into the room, it's going to have an effect on everything. It's going to, in other words, it creates a reaction into it. What kind of a reaction? A realization, reaction, response. Everything we do is a response to that inner dwelling, divine essence that is God is within us. And that's why, and what is God doing? God is drawing everything back to Him. That's why whether we do good things or bad things is of no import. What comes out is that process whereby God is drawing us back to Himself. So,
and Baba says that. He says in those readings, he says that.
Yeah.
The very thing that you just said.
Yeah. And so now there's another talk called God Has to Be Manifested. This is a short excerpt from it. We find out by our own effort who is God. We find out by our own effort who is God. We find out by our own effort what is God in use in us. That use in us. We as intelligent race of head have to realize in the heart that which in us is God in use. God in use, God in us is use. He makes the point, it's all just use in order to get us back to Him. Now this one is really amazing. It ties in with the life messages. It's from, there's 4 mystical life articles that were written and published by Narina. There's an additional 10 or 14 that were in Adi Keirani's, they're in his archives that are on the Trust website. Scott went, found them, pulled them out. And now this particular one that I'm reading is Mystical Life 2. It is printed in the journal. And this is an excerpt from it. Remember that I have come not to teach, but to awaken. What is the meaning of this? It means exactly this, what is so individually important, and that is to self-realize in this mind, which is finite, the divine state of non-reaction, that is mental calm. Unessential and unnecessary is the act of self-realizing when I am in the human body. Unessential and unnecessary is the act of self-realizing when I am in the human body. That is to say, no one needs to go any further his own individual effort to self-conscious realize the divine existence within. No one needs to make further studies about the mind and its reactions. Psychology is of no more use. It is no more of use to take up the subject of creation and its dual finite order of making life a trial, a quest. The demon that is in men is the dual order in thought, creating continuous reaction. That is the demon. That is the double-headed eye that is creating so much trouble in everyone who is trying to enter into the realm of mind and being, or into the realm of deeper knowing, or say, into the realm of infinite I. Then in the last message, this is the one that I really love. Mystical Life 14. Just an excerpt. Do no more criticize the other one. Do no more criticize the other one who in I is doing the show of self-realization in the way I am doing it in him or her. Be real in your thought. Be true to your own I as self, as mind in being. You can have a little. There's one more I can share that's from the gift, which I think you're probably all familiar with the gift. The gift, the fragments of a spiritual diary and the gift are both included on the Trust website. The gift is out of print. But there's a lot of information in that, and I guess the one thing I wanted to say was, like Anton Barzag, who was there in print. These articles were there in print, and many of you perhaps read all of them. I mean, but it didn't register. It's like the life messages. I was talking with the nurse. Who was it? That was Judy. What? No, Judy
Shotwell?
at Marizad that helped with the Mandalay.
Yeah, Stephen.
Judy.
Stephen.
Is it Judy Steve?
Judy
It's on the chat every Monday.
Oh, Judy Robertson.
Judy Robertson.
Yeah.
Judy Robertson from Seattle. She happened to mention, because we were talking about it, she said, you know, in 1995, I think it was, Bao was in the hospital. Because I was mentioning, you know, the Mandalay didn't really talk about the life messages, to my knowledge. Did they talk about the life messages? No. They talked about the new life messages in the labor phase. But she said, you'd be interested. Bao had me read to him all of the life messages while he was convalescing in the hospital.
Wow.
So, does anybody have anything to say? I'll read one last thing. Yeah.
There's a story in the Old Testament about Moses having received the Ten Commandments, and then God says to Moses, gather together leaders and priests, 70 of them, and so that you will not feel so burdened, I will take some of the Spirit which I have given to you and give it to each of these 70, so that you will not be so burdened. And several days later, someone by the name of Josiah comes up to Moses and says, I heard these two men prophesying. And Moses says, are you envious on my behalf? And I think, this refers to the social dynamics of, someone hearing voices, and does this give them special status? No. And this is where, Bernie Sanders is so important to me. And he talks about, social democracy and being a social democrat, because the voices are invested in everybody. And when you place all of the divine in one person, you're in trouble. But when you see the divine in every person, then you have a sense of the presence of God.
Love the one in the many.
One in the many, yeah. I mean, that is, I found, along the lines of don't worry, be happy, I make plans, and I have, this is going to happen or that going to happen. I mean, this is the case in point. But when you come, you don't know what's going to happen. And it's actually better that way. You make plans, and then it's like Elizabeth said, she has that time of silence where she's open to, what the questions are in her mind, what the plans, whatever she's open. And then the day becomes the answer.
Yeah.
We can go all sorts of different ways of where we're going. I mean, it was really astounding today. I didn't finish this until like 20 after 2. And I was making the chai and it all kind of worked out.
Great job.
And so I'll read this last. This is message number 30 from the 40 Messages of Narina. You have come on earth to realize God. I do not ask you to go to the caves like the saints of the past. Remain in the world without being entangled therein. Do not renounce your duties with the hope of becoming spiritual. Do your duties, but have no desires for personal gain or reward. Let not your status or achievements fill your mind with false pride. When you offer your mind in love and faith, I do everything through you. You will then be no more bound by what you do. You will be unattached and yet in full action. You will reign free in the midst of your works, and you will worry no more about what life brings to you. You will dwell in unshakable peace in spite of the tribulations in the world. You will be my chosen torchbearers. God is everywhere and does everything. God is within us and knows everything. God is without us and sees everything. God is beyond us and is everything. Amen.